Well, Vaughan National, gosh, haven't they had some activity lately? Wow, and look, their conference that's been long gone in the dust, but, what's your update? What's really...
Well, do you know, gee, what a difference a day makes, but let's just wind the bus back to the conference last weekend. A lot happened, and I think one of the most important things a lot of people missed is the board. They've got a new president, so long-standing president, Peter Goodfellow, stood down. Sylvia Wood comes in. It's not a new broom situation, it's really a rearrangement of the deck chairs, not on the Titanic, rearrangement of the deck chairs. So the composition of the board exactly the same. And I get it why National have done this. It's a safe set of hands going into 2023. Sylvia's very capable, has a great working relationship with everybody else on the board. And look, she's blue-blooded, man. So I think that's a good call.
Do you know Sylvia? Because she's unknown to everyone else. Actually, I know her personally, and I know you do as well.
Yeah. Look, I don't know Sylvia intimately, but what I will say, if I had to describe Sylvia, an extremely capable lady. I totally get it while she is there. Disruptor? Absolutely not. Compliant? Yes. Governant? Yes. All those things, and that's what National needs right now. No surprises.
Let me just explain. I knew her in employment law because she's a competitor of mine.
Yep.
So what I say is I've seen consistency with her right through.
Yep.
So I guess that's what we can see with National.
Yeah.
There's probably not going to be any changes of her being president.
Yep.
And I think that's probably what the future's going to be holding for her.
Yeah. So, okay, that's the board. Let's push them to one side because really it's the party that we want to focus on. For National, they'd have to be delighted how that Christchurch conference went for them. And look, to be frank, I'd give it a scorecard of 10 out of 10. Why would I give it 10 out of 10? At last year's conference, I was there. That was down in Manukau. And by comparison, the party then was a basket case. I mean, everyone was wandering around aimlessly, faces like slapped asses, treading on eggshells. Judith Collins was holding on by the skin of her teeth, the leadership. And, the fact of the matter is that the atmosphere of last year's conference was toxic. So here we are, a year later. Chris Luxon is the leader. And what a turnaround. The difference is night and day. So even the biggest detractor of National would admit that Chris Luxon has not only arrested that decline, but he's also established a renewed sense of belief.
Let me interrupt you there, because one thing, about a year ago, you and I sat around together.
We did.
Yeah, and you made a prediction. Judith's gone.
Yeah.
She's going to go. And I said, no, I think you're wrong.
Yeah.
I think you're wrong.
Yeah.
I've got to hand it to you, Vaughan. You were right.
Well, the hit rate, but don't ask me who's gone next.
And the other thing is Chris Luxon has done a good job. He's brought that party up to a good level again, good numbers, and it's floating along. It's not doing miraculously well, but cheapest it is almost back to where it was.
Yeah, so if we look at the last 12 months and the turnaround, amazing, because the years 2017 to 2021 National, they couldn't even run a bloody bath, let alone a country. So the truth is, now they're looking like they could be fit for purpose to be a government. So, for that reason alone, Max, 10 out of 10 for the conference. But I have to always, throw something in there as a disclaimer. I see two areas as their pain point. The first area I see, voters 30 and under. They don't have any, really. And number two, the Māori vote. Now, I'll start with voters 30 and under. If you went to a National Party conference, you would notice a sea of grey and bald heads. And, that's the man and the woman. Average age around 110 years old. The number of people below the age of 30, I think 4. You'd find that might be Jurassic Park. So you could be forgiven that thinking that you'd accidentally wandered into the AGM of the New Zealand Rest Home Residents Association. So that's a bit of an issue for National, Max.
Let me just add, but that's your first point, and I know you've got a second point to make. But look, in terms of that, every political party I've been to, or every political meeting I've been to, are grey heads. Now, those are the people who seem to be focusing on it, and that's all parties. Jim Anderton, I went to, I've been to ACT parties, I've been across the spectrum, having a little look and seeing it. So you're not wrong there, but it is common amongst all parties.
Yeah. So I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but I think the reality is that for the last two elections, and particularly this one, the millennials are coming through. So as a voter base, there is a more than under 30 portion of voter who is resonating with them, and hands down it is not National. They're not attracting young people. If you went and had a look at the young Nats today compared to what it was 10 years ago, it's just a shadow of its former
Well, yeah,
self.
I saw an ACT meeting recently, and you're right. It was actually quite a few young people in there, but not a majority. They were in a minority, but they were quite hell of a lot more than I'd seen as usual.
Yeah.
So there is more young people becoming active.
Yeah.
Now, what's your second point?
Yeah, my second point. So that's pain point number one. Okay, number two, the Māori vote. Now, this is an interesting Pat, we've talked about this a lot, really. So no surprise. So right now, at this moment, if you tapped into the Māori Kumravine across New Zealand, you would likely sense that Māori will feel that they are better off with the devil they know, right? Labour. And right now, National look too high risk for Māori, particularly when you consider that David Seymour would be thrown in there as coalition party. For Māori, that's about as appealing as a cold cup of sick. So National will need to figure out how to manage that, because if they don't, what you'll see at the next election is Māori will turn out in record numbers just to circumvent that, and what we could see is Māori Party holding kingmaker position. Now, I mean, just the thought of that would make the prospect of the voter base that is in behind National, which is that older, sea of grey, mainly Pakeha, I mean, seriously, they will fill their nappies. You will hear the sharts all over town. That's a major for them. So, Max, I'll wrap this up with this. It's highly likely at the next election, Chris Luxon wakes up next morning, he's Prime Minister. I think that's fairly likely. But National will not win the election because they're visionary or inspirational. It will govern because of the disapproval of Labour, voter disapproval of Labour. So for me, Max, I want to be inspired. I want vision. So I don't think that's too much to ask as a voter, to be frank.
No, and look, I have to concur with you. I think if I was a Māori voter, I would be saying, look, Labour's been so good to us. They've given us everything. They've really, really been generous. The most generous any government's done in probably history.
Yeah.
And in regards to looking after Māori. So it would be very hard for them to move away from Labour right now.
Yeah, look, Max, that's a really accurate comment. And what I'd say is, don't believe that Māori are lovers of Labour. They are not. Helen Clark, foreshore seabed debate 2004-5, she tried to shaft all of Māoridom with that. So a lot of Māori have always been very suspicious of Labour, but this current administration has absolutely tried for Māori, regardless of what anyone thinks. And I think for Māori, they look at it and go, well, what would be the incentive to vote for the other guys?
Interesting. You just said the word tried for Māori.
They've tried. I'm not saying they've succeeded.
Okay, that's the point I was just going to make, because this government's been a failure in terms of putting its policies into place. And is that the same with Māori issues, is it?
Yeah, I think that if Māori were honest, they would acknowledge the effort that's gone in terms of the outcomes, the output. There's not actually a hell of a lot to show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so and look, that might want to be debated, and it's a whole other post, but that would be my take on it. But at least the intent is there to give things a crack. And with the Māori caucus as big as Labour have got, there's no excuse for that not to be the case.
Now, the elephant in the room.
Yeah, the elephant in the room.
Oh, Tauranga.
Yeah, oh my God, what a difference a day makes, eh? A 10 out of a 10 conference. We wake up Monday morning and Sam Uffindell, just won the Tauranga seat. And looks like, what's he done? As a 16-year-old, he's beat the living shit out of a 13-year-old at school, got expelled. Clearly, he's put those cards on the table when he was going for the candidacy.
Yeah.
And the party has said, go off and sort it out. And he's gone off and sorted out, but it's come back to bite him on the ass. The victim has gone, hang on a minute, you're taking the piss here, bro. So, poor old Chris. And actually, the new president, Sylvia, they've got a bit of an issue they need to sort out here.
Well, definitely, because people are blaming the leaders got to sort this out, but
yes.
also I think Sylvia's got a lot to do as a president, and she's got to set the policies and make sure they're being followed.
Yeah, and poor old Sylvia, poor Sylvia, not poor old Sylvia, that's a bit rude. Sorry, Sylvia. Is that this is what Peter Goodfellow was putting up with, remember Jamie Lee Ross and all the crap. All of a sudden it's like, well, here's the day of life as president of the National Party. Hey, look, I think coming back to Sam, what do we do there? What would you do or what would I do? I think the real question that I ask is that 22 years ago, Sam is a 16-year-old with a couple of other guys, goes into a dorm on the last day of school at King's College, one of the most elite schools in New Zealand, beats the snot out of a kid, right? Some 22 years later, Sam has this sudden epiphany and come to Jesus moment where he wants to apologise to the victim. He rings the apology, and after some effort, apologises. Now, is that what really happened, or did he apologise to clear the path for his political ambitions? That's the question we need to ask. At the moment, I remain unconvinced that it's the former and not the latter.
Oh, well, no, I think it's pretty clear. He tried to clear the path for him to get elected.
Yes.
But I think the question's this, Vaughan, if you don't mind me saying, I think the question is, did he learn from that? Has he actually repeated that behaviour again since?
Yep.
Is there any evidence of that?
Yep.
Now, I am aware that the National Party do go in and look at your references. They do call people up. I've had phone calls about national people before.
Yep.
Now, whether they've done a thorough job or not, well, who knows?
Yeah, and I'm keen to just give this a little bit more oxygen. Now, none of us are saints, right? I mean, seriously, I couldn't have a career in politics. I've got so many bloody skeletons. I've got storage units and cemeteries.
Okay. Well, tell us about them, Vaughan. That'd be maybe more interesting in this post.
If I shared some of those, seriously, there'd be someone knocking on the door. They would put me in a cell and throw away the key, right? So to be fair to Sam, we have issues in our past lives. Do we learn from those? Well, that's the question that remains to be answered in this situation. Has he? Well, if he hasn't learned from it, he certainly has now.
No, absolutely.
And look, and looking over the other side at the other team, well, the Speaker of the House, some 20 odd years ago, smacked old Tohanari in the mouth, and he's the Speaker of the House. So, we got to look at it in terms of...
Tell me, Vaughan, what happened to him over that? Did they get suspended or laid off or perhaps not banned from Parliament?
Trevor Mallard?
Yeah.
Well, as far as I'm aware, he got a promotion and he's being lined up for a knighthood. So Sam, hang in there, bro. Hang in there.
You're going to be Speaker of the House and you're going to get promoted.
That's right.
And sent to Ireland.
Yeah, but I think that to put that into context, and we can take the piss out of it because it's not funny. Because to be frank, the Tohanari I know, if he'd had his way, he would have flattened Trevor Mallard. He's not the thug that he thinks he is. But coming back to 20 years ago versus today, it's a wokey dokey different old world. You can be hassled for bullying just for frowning at someone these days. So it's timing and when this has happened. So Sam's going to probably get roughed up a hell of a lot more in terms of expectation. And the reality is we'll all be with bated breath waiting to see how they handle this, because our sort of perception of their authenticity and being values led, this is going to be their example.
Do you know, Vaughan, when I was 16, we had fights.
Of course.
Physical fights. I got hidings. I remember even on the rugby field catching a bunch of fives occasionally. You're down on the ruck because I used to play a little bit dirty too, but, you'd get a punch in your mouth for being bloody, and you didn't run off anywhere and tell anyone. But that was the life in those days.
And that's the real world and a life worth living. And if we look into Parliament, most of the politicians who have not got skeletons in their closets, a life unled, as boring as Batshit, to be frank, we don't want those people running our country. We want real world experience. We want mistakes.
Good point.
But this one, I don't know. That's going to be a bit of a tough one to navigate.
I hope he gets through it. I do, in a way. But God, they've just gone and spent $1 million down there for an election.
Yeah.
Or and be ashamed to go and redo it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, they're going to find some way of trying to save him, and so that'll be interesting to see over the next couple of days. Yeah.
All right, mate. Well,
as usual, awesome, Max. Thanks for the chat. Really appreciate it.